Committee of the Non-Academic Staff Union of Universities and Allied Institutions and Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities on the 5 days warning strike action over the refusal of the federal government to implement the 2009 agreements. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we welcome you all to this press conference in order to keep the public aware of the negative attitude of government to the issues concerning the welfare of non-teaching staff unions in the Nigerian university system, persistent breach of 2009 agreements by government, and the impact it has on the university education in Nigeria. It will be recalled that the Joint Action Committee of NASU and SANU embarked on a 5 days warning strike, which commenced on 19th of August 2019 over the refusal of the federal government to implement the 2009 agreement is signed with the unions. Among the issues that necessitated the strike include: 1, discriminatory payment of arrears of earned allowances being owed our members; 2, non-implementation of the December 5th, 2016 judgment of the National Industrial Court of Nigeria on university staff schools; and 3, renegotiation of the 2009 FGN/University Staff Unions agreements. Today, being Thursday, 22nd August 2019, marks the 4th day of the warning strike, and we can authoritatively say that the strike has made a tremendous impact in informing the populace. However, it is imperative to shed more light on the issues that prompted the warning strike so that the public and the good people of Nigeria can be well informed and be able to prevail on the government to do the needful in order to avoid the mother of all strikes that will follow this. 1, discriminatory payment of arrears of earned allowances to members of the unions. In 2009, the federal government entered into agreement with the university staff unions on earned allowances. In 2013, 4 years after, the federal government released the first tranche of the arrears of earned allowances amounting to 30 billion naira for payment to federal universities and inter-university centers workers. This money was released to the various governing councils of the institutions for disbursement to the workers accordingly. However, in 2017, the second tranche of 23 billion naira was disbursed to the university in a very strange manner that is totally alien to any known accounting principle and best practices in the whole world. In the distribution, the sum of 18.4 billion naira, representing 89%, was allocated to the teaching staff, that is ASU, while the non-teaching staff unions were allocated a paltry sum of 4.6 billion naira, representing 11%. We want to specifically mention it that the inter-university centers and the recently established federal universities were excluded from the disbursement. And we want to say it here that when the 30 billion naira was released in the first tranche, both the new universities and the inter-university centers were all partakers in the disbursement. This discriminatory practice by the federal government was strongly criticized by the non-teaching staff, with protests and strikes. Government, in its intervention, promised that this action would never repeat itself again. Contrary to this promise, the sum of 25 billion naira was approved and disbursed to federal universities in 2019, with 20 billion naira of the total sum representing 80% of the sum again allocated to the teaching staff, ASU. Remember, we said in 2017, 89% of the 23 billion was given to ASU, while only 11%, that is 4.6 billion, given to the remaining non-teaching staff unions, which are in numbers. So this, again, we want to say that this time, the inter-university centers were again excluded in the disbursement, making it the second time. This repeated discriminatory practice by government of the day in favor of ASU and against the non-teaching staff unions is not only worrisome, but has portrayed the present government as biased, as well as causing divide and rule, capable of creating disharmony in the system as an avenue to crumble and or kill the university education system. And you all know too well that the public universities is the only avenue that the common man can send their children for tertiary education training. Therefore, the JAC of SANU and NASU is calling on all Nigerians to condemn this act of government with a view to correcting it. Consequently, the JAC of NASU and SANU is demanding a sum of 30 billion naira from the federal government for payment to the non-teaching staff in order to bridge or close the gap it created by the discriminatory allocations. Thereafter, JAC expects that government will not allow such dichotomy or discrimination to raise its ugly head again in the system as it defrays the balance of the arrears of earned allowances. 2. Non-implementation of the December 5, 2016 judgment of the National Industrial Court of Nigeria on university staff schools. It is no longer news that over 2,000 members of SANU and NASU have been sent out of their jobs via a circular released by the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission since 2014 in violation of the provisions of the 2009 agreement between federal government and SANU and NASU respectively. This gave rise to a series of protests and strikes that forced the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment, while intervening, to seek for interpretation of the clause in the agreement at the National Industrial Court to ascertain if one university is different from government for the purpose of funding of the university staff schools. The interpretation, which was given in a landmark judgment by the National Industrial Court on 5th December 2016, reads thus, in quote, "The university staff schools are an integral part of the university system, and government and university being the same in this case, the employees in the university staff schools remain employees of the university like any other staff, and as such, employees of the federal government. I end the quote. The Jack of Sanu and Nasu wondered why it is so difficult for a government which is purportedly run under the rule of law to vacillate over a straightforward issue as this. It is believed that if the judgment had gone against our members, government or the various institutions wouldn't have even waited a minute to implement it, and by now, the university staff schools would have gone into extinction or become private entities. As we speak today, almost 3 years after the National Industrial Court judgment, nothing has been done to facilitate the process of getting the employments of thousands of our members restored. Jack has waited enough on this matter. Our members have suffered well enough, and we shall take nothing short of the 2009 agreements on staff schools as declared by the National Industrial Court of Nigeria judgment, and we reject any attempt to reinterpret the judgment or implement it in breach. Therefore, Jack implores the good people of Nigeria as a matter of urgency to prevail on the federal government to, 1, issue a service-wide circular to comply with the court order as well as counter the obnoxious one that removed the staff school workers to all public universities without further delay. 2, restore the job of the workers in the university staff schools and pay their salaries accordingly. And 3, pay the arrears owed these categories of workers in the university sector since they were laid off. And then the third item in the struggle is renegotiation of the 2009 FGN/University Staff Union agreements. When the 2009 agreements were signed with the various unions in the university system, they were due for renegotiation after every 3 years. It took the federal government over 3 years to commence the implementation of the 2009 agreements that it voluntarily signed, and till date have refused to fully implement it. The Jack of Nasu and Sanu made a series of communications with the federal government on the need to return to the renegotiation table so that the agreement, which was due since 2012, will be renegotiated, all to no avail, until 2017, when it reluctantly set up a renegotiation team. 2 years down the line, no meaningful progress has been made. The most painful aspect of the renegotiation exercise is the unwillingness of the federal government to proceed with it. For instance, since the beginning of the year 2019, the federal government team has not deemed it necessary to call for a meeting to continue the renegotiation exercise, and no reason has been given for it. The implication of this delay is that the university system has been pulled down and backward by 10 years, that is from 2009 to 2019. And is still counting. The progress that the universities would have made through the renegotiation of the agreement, which also includes university funding university governance, and improvement of standard, etc., have been denied because the federal government wants to kill the public universities in order to promote their interests, that is, the private universities, that they used our money, your hard-earned money, the public money to establish for their own personal interests. You may wish to know that since the beginning of this warning strike, government has shown no concern to warrant any intervention. It is, however, important to state here that when the threat of the warning strike was issued and the protests that preceded it in the various campuses began, the Senate President invited the national leadership of JAC, of NASU and SANU for discussion. But the protests by the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, IMN, on that fateful day prevented access to the National Assembly. Hence, the meeting could not hold. We are still waiting for a re-invitation. Again, the meeting with the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Education, about 2 weeks ago did not produce anything convincing to stop this warning strike, which in its name is a warning. That is, something else is coming behind. Therefore, finally, government is hereby advised to expedite actions in addressing the issues raised and any other issue that is still pending in the 2009 agreement in order to avoid the imminent murder of all strikes that will be witnessed in the university sector. However, as I round up, while sitting in this room for this press conference to begin, my attention was drawn to this as I was handed over this document from the National Universities Commission. This circular was dated 20th August, but we are receiving it today. And it's titled, Re-mainstreaming of the Payment of Staff School Teachers' Salaries into the National Budget, addressed to all Vice Chancellors. That is to say that, just like I read in my speech, why did government have to wait from December 5th, 2016 to 20th of August 2019 to release this circular that is a directive of the court in giving correct interpretation to the clause in the 2009 agreement saying that government is supposed to be responsible for the recurrent and capital expenditure or cost of members of or workers in the staff in the university staff school. That is what is contained here. And this is a government that says it respects the rule of law and will not go against it. But since 2014 have kept people suffering because they were unjustly laid off. And like I said, if it were a government, if the judgment had gone this way that, yes, government is not supposed to be responsible for the salaries of these staff school teachers, I tell you, even before the news carry it, they would have laid off and even maybe cancelled or removed staff school entirely from the university sector. Yes, our people will return to work because the strike is only just warning. At the end of this strike, the leadership of the JAC will sit down to review the whole system and will communicate our decisions subsequently. Our problem is, why do they have to wait for agitation, strikes, and suffering a lot of persons. Remember, one worker has a lot of dependents and people to take care of. The children of this staff have been sent packing from schools because they could not pay school fees. Many of them have died because they could not attend to their health needs. Why should government be doing this? This letter has already settled whatever it is in the university staff school. And indications are already flowing in that some universities have already started complying by recalling. And we expect that under no circumstance should anyone delay the implementation. And it is so captured here that subsequent budget in 2020 should capture the staff school workers in their presentations. I want to let us know that, first of all, what the federal government did not follow any known accounting principle. Allowances are an integral part of salaries that are paid to workers anywhere. And it is the duty of the employer to pay salaries and allowances. The fact that the money meant for these salaries and allowances is coming from government does not mean that the federal government should take over the immediate employers of the employees. The federal government put the university governing councils in place to act on its behalf. And that was when, at a time in 2013, when they released 30 billion as the first tranche, they gave it to the governing councils to pay. What happened this time around? That in 2017 and in 2019, when they released 23 billion, the sharing was done before it got to the university governing councils. And they were only directed that this money should be paid as allocated from the office of the Accountant General. Does it then mean that the Accountant General have become the governing councils of these universities that should be paying the salaries and allowances? Again, the Accountant General do not have the details of what is being owed a particular staff, which is applicable to every individual staff in these universities all over Nigeria. How did they come with that configuration of their allocation that made them to share when you have 4 universities staff unions? You now decided to give 80% to one union and you gave 20% to the remaining 3. Are you saying that one of the unions also is more superior to the remaining 3? All of us are complementing one another. You are there to teach, you cannot administer the other things. All of us have direct impact on the major stakeholder, who are the students. Yes, students go for lectures, but they have a place to stay in the hostel. They have a place for recreation. They have a place to go for their health needs and several other things. So everybody is important in the system. Why should government be causing this dichotomy? The government is the father of all, but they have chosen to prefer one over and above the rest. I think the whole Nigerians should condemn this act, and government should rescind and desist from doing any such flaws in subsequent times. Thank you. Second question. The second question. Yes, we are not responsible for the allocation of ministers. Their principal, who is the president of Nigeria, felt that these people have done very well, in this sector and decided to return them there. We have known them, and we will continue to play along. But to us, since they have been returned to these ministries, knowing fully well that maybe they know much about what it takes to run this system or these ministries, we believe that they will learn to correct whatever mistakes that they have done before that have led to the various agitations and strikes. And maybe we hope for a better relationship that will better the university education system in Nigeria.